Morning, everybody. Just a sound check for you guys who are joining the meeting or have joined. We will start in 4 minutes time, just admitting all the colleagues into the session. So we'll be with you in a few seconds. Morning, Carl. You guys are welcome to greet each other in the chat room and share contact details, networking. You're most welcome to do that. Thank you, Gwen. Yeah, I'm using a new microphone, so I believe my sound should be better today. Good morning, everybody. It's great seeing all the faces again. And it's a nice and cool day here in Pretoria. I hope it is a nice day where you are. And we've been looking forward for some time to this event. Apologies again for having to postpone this event till today, but it's given more people opportunity to register for the event. So we've been looking forward also to being hosted by Louise Widget and her team, Global Trade Solution, and it's done excellent work in putting this panel together for us. So we really appreciate that. Let us just quickly have a look at our program while we do some housekeeping and still admitting more people into the program or into the session. All right, so let me just get my screen sorted on this side. Good. So we're talking about Border Management Authority and South African Revenue Services Strategic Update. It's the 11th of November. While we're still admitting people, please remember to keep yourselves on mute as much as possible. We will, during the questions and answers session, we will give you opportunity to unmute yourself and ask a question when recognized. Otherwise, we're just going to moderate the session for us. And should something go wrong, keep an eye on your inbox, your mail inbox. Then we'll send you a new link to join the session again. Should something go wrong, I believe it won't. And so as you know that all Transport Forum events are complimentary, and also all the related content, the presentations on the website, all of that is complimentary. So we have valued sponsors and associates making this possible. And we would like to give them recognition for, supporting the Transport Forum, making it possible. But we're going to have fun again today. We're going to have a quiz, and you might be the winner of one or two of these nice lanterns. They solar powered, as well as they've got a winder that you can charge it should there not be solar available. So all sorts of energy into one lantern. And it's very handy nowadays with all the load shedding and so on. So if you listen carefully, then we're going to introduce our sponsors and our associates. We're going to ask two questions afterwards, and the first one that answers the question correctly in the chat room, that person will be the winner of that prize, and we will have the prize couriered to your address. And we will contact you afterwards and obtain your address from you, the delivery address, and we will courier it to you. So we will hand out two of these lanterns today. So listen carefully when we introduce our sponsors. All right, exciting topic. So the Transport Forum is proudly associated with formal bodies of the industry. We've got SARS, RFA, SAPA, SABOA, AREA, and SALSA. And we're quickly going to give you an introduction to these organizations. Any of these organizations and sponsors are welcome to interrupt me in the beginning when I speak, if you want to say a few words yourself about your organization. Because I'm not always aware, who's online and who's willing to speak. But most of the time, they let me do the hard work to do all the sharing and all the talking. But let's see how it goes. So, South African Express Parcel Association is a representative body and voice of the express delivery industry in South Africa. Gary Marshall and his team been supporting the Transport Forum as an associate for a few years now. Very proud of having them on board. Thank you very much, SAPA. The Road Freight Association. I don't know if Kevin is online to speak about them. So Road Freight Association, they say without trucks, South Africa stops, and they embrace green, smart, safe, legal, and freight, and taking good care of our truckers in our industry, representing them. Thank you very much, RFA. We've got the African Rail Industry Association, preeminent body in South Africa representing players in the railway industry. And they're doing lots of good work in terms of third-party access into our rail network. So we're very proud of the work they are doing. South African Bus Operators Association. I see Basil is online. Basil, you want to say a few words?
Morning, Harry. Morning, colleagues. Hope everybody is well. Yeah, as stated there on our setup, SABOA represents the bus and coach industry at large. And looking forward to today's event, because the BMA is a critical partner in our cross-border sector. And we're hoping to hear what's the latest developments and how we can also be part of the engagements there going forward. Thank you, Harry. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, Basil, and congratulations on your great event you had on Wednesday, the SABOA Day. It was for the Transport Forum privilege to host that event for you, and it was really a great event. So remember the Transport Forum YouTube channel and the SABOA playlist to YouTube will, flight this presentation. You want to have a look at it. Welcome to go and look at that. All right, so then South African Association of Freight Forwarders, really established in 1921 as a national association of members of the Republic of South Africa. And you can see the association accepted by authorities as the leading industry voice and as consultant by them on matters influencing freight management. So these organizations, be on that space and you're not a member of these associations, definitely it's not time to do that. Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, network of national councils and sections in over 30 countries, still services the interests of over 30,000 members. Thank you very much, SILSA. We've also got formal industry alliances, media alliances, Freight News, Railways Africa, and Engineering News. Let's quickly have a look at Freight News. You can see news and features for import and export decision makers, www.freightnews.co.za. You should be subscribed to this magazine. They've actually been part of the Transport Forum since inception, and that was more than 15 years ago. And if you're not subscribed here, you're missing out big time, ladies and gents. Railways Africa magazine, you can see it's the African continent specialist trade technical business to business online publication covering all aspects in the rail sector. All about rail infrastructure. Engineering media and news, it's Crema Media's engineering news. They usually give us a nice video, a wrap up of the week, and I would like to show that to you now.
Hello and welcome to the roundup of.
Sorry, just a moment, I'm sharing the wrong screen, yeah. Got too many screens open, apologies, I will sort it out. Let's try again. There we go.
Hello and welcome to the roundup of this week's edition of the Engineering News and Mining Weekly magazine, published on Friday, 11 November 2022. In this week's cover article, Engineering News and Mining Weekly Senior Deputy Editor Skulk Berger writes that hydrogen is set to play a key role in the hard-to-abate transport sectors. Green hydrogen's value lies in decarbonizing difficult-to-abate sectors, such as heavy vehicle mobility and industrial processes, with heavy vehicle transport seen as a lead market. The Engineering News features focus on valves, where a specialist is awarded a testing and maintenance contract. Energy efficiency and management, where the City of Cape Town is on track to become an African energy diversification beacon. And bearings and bushes, where a bearings company successfully completes a company acquisition. The Mining Weekly features focus on health and safety, where a mining group aims to regain 2021 safety performance. And oil and gas in Africa, where volatile prices present opportunities for exporters. This week's business leader is Bradley Rogers, CEO and MD of Jupiter Mines Limited. And as this week's cartoon shows, the scrapping of e-tolls became inevitable when there was massive civil disobedience. What is less inevitable is whether the Gauteng authorities will come up with an acceptable funding plan to maintain and expand the highway network. We hope you enjoy this week's edition of Creamer Media's Engineering News and Mining Weekly. Be sure to subscribe to the magazine that offers you in-depth news about developments in the real economy by emailing subscriptions@engineeringnews.co.za. Happy reading and see you next time.
Great, thank you, Engineering News, for sharing that video. Exciting news. Ladies and gents, I'm going to give Louise Widget opportunity to quickly introduce us to the hosting company of today.
Morning, Harry, and morning, colleagues on the line. Wonderful to see such a nice group together. And Harry, once again, thank you for creating the Transport Forum and taking us from strength to strength over the last 2 years. Just a quick introduction on Global Trade Solution. We've really got three pillars, and our primary work is in the international supply chain arena. So the discussion today, both from a BMA point of view and from the vision from the SARS point of view, is critically important. Our 3 pillars are really consulting and strategy work. We also do IT solutions, both for customs and for the private sector, and then also performing some specialized services. So anybody interested in any of these items, please reach out to me. I'm happy to assist and look forward to a very informative session. Thank you very much, Harry.
Thank you, Louise. Much appreciated. Looking forward to spending the day with you guys, and we'll be back with you in a few seconds. Thank you, Louise. Right, ladies and gents, the platinum sponsor of the Transport Forum is C-Track, and C-Track, you can see they're talking about they're the leading global service as a service, software as a service provider and big data company for vehicle tracking, fleet management, and insurance telematics solutions. They span across 6 continents, over 55 countries, with over 30 years of experience, and they're making you always visible. It's so important in our lives of today to be always visible. University of Johannesburg, also one of the founding members of the Transport Forum. The Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management is housed at the School of Management within the College of Business and Economics at the University of Johannesburg. And they say the excellent qualification provides key skills and facilitate career development in an important industry. So on behalf of the Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management, we encourage you to travel smart and plan your journey with us. And there's the website for UJ. Thank you very much, Prof. Visa and team. Pegasus, changing lives, changing worlds. So in South Africa, we leverage our sector-leading expertise and experience to craft and implement mobility solutions which work and have substantial impact. And you can see the sectors: cities, climate, energy, resilience, transport, waste, and water. Pegasus, very proud of your gold sponsorship. Thank you very much. Unitron Supply Chain Solutions. Remember, you guys are welcome to interrupt if you want to say a few words yourself. Unitron's innovation expertise delivered. It's a leading provider of integrated transportation, warehousing, and supply chain-based services to customers with a variety of needs, offering bespoke value propositions in each segment. Thank you very much, Unitron's gold sponsor. BMA Cargo fulfills the needs of the express cargo industry for daytime and overnight cargo capacity across a comprehensive Southern and East Africa footprint. Thank you for your gold sponsorship of the BMA Cargo. Right, Ticket Pro Travel, a very convenient online booking tool. You can see ticketprotravel.co.za, and that is for all your online corporate travel booking tool with everything you need and nothing you don't want. Right, so you can see it's a travel protector, business guardian, and cutting-edge innovation for all your corporate online booking needs. Thank you, Ticket Pro, gold sponsor. The same group, they've got the Smart Tap solution, excellent solutions. You can see the system includes key features like comprehensive route management, flexible passenger payment methods, flexible route and fare product setup, shift and dispatch management, cashier system, inspection tools, and comprehensive management information system reports. Thank you very much, Ticket Pro Smart Tap. JC Auditors, right? Certification, compliance, and one solution. So they are SANAS accredited certification body providing internationally recognized certifications. Also very much involved, you can see in the left bottom there, the road transport management system. Thank you very much, Oliver and team, for your good work and sponsorship. Zutari, consulting engineers, they say previously known as Oricon, you can see they say it's impact engineers. And Zutari also been a co-sponsor of the Transport Forum for more than 10 years. So we're very proud in having them online. Right, then we have Standard Bank, over 160 years of experience and believe that dreams matter and that together they can make them a reality. So Standard Bank, Kathy Bell and team, very much involved with the Transport Forum, and we really appreciate what they are doing. Kuba, transforming ticketing. Kuba is part of the ICM Mobility Group, which enables public and private transport to move into the digital era. So they do journey planning, smart ticketing, streamlining electronic payment, shaping the digital transformation of the mobility sector. Thank you very much, Kuba, for your gold sponsorship also many years with the Transport Forum. EasyClear. I don't know if Michael want to say a few words about EasyClear.
Morning, Harry. Thank you very much. Morning to everybody online, colleagues and friends and participants. It's refreshing to see so many sponsors, Harry. We're going from strength to strength, and I'm pleased to say that EasyClear will continue to sponsor the Transport Forum in 2023. So thank you. Yes, EasyClear, as it shows you on the screen, leading software service provider to the freight forwarding, customs clearing and logistics supply chain. We offer a software as a service solution, enabling greater visibility across the supply chain and the ability to customs clear online from anywhere in the world where you have a browser and internet connection. We look forward to participating in today's session, and I'm very pleased that we'll hear some more from the BMA. I was privileged on my recent travels to one of the borders to see the new fleet of BMA vehicles looking smart. Very good. Thank you very much, Harry.
Thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate your sponsorship, and we look forward to seeing EasyClear with the Transport Forum for many years. Thank you so much. Ladies and gents, one of our speakers trying to contact me. Just bear with me for a few seconds. Ladies and gents, I'm just busy with somebody to get into the session.
I can, in the meantime, maybe assist while you just
Thank you, Louise.
Assisting there. So I think maybe for everybody that is on the group, it is wonderful to have this, the Transport Forum as a neutral platform where we can share ideas, get updates from the industry and everything. And we're currently busy putting together with Harry the possible program for next year. And it will be fantastic if the people on this audience today can also give their inputs and send those through to Harry of particular subjects that you believe will be important for us to cover next year. And also, I think very importantly, the format that the sessions are run. Do you enjoy the shorter, punchy, more focused sessions? This is a collective forum, and I think Harry has always been open for suggestions and comments. And then last but not least, also for the first time ever, Harry, I think you are having a year-end function, which has been hosted on the 1st of December. So we hope to see most of the colleagues online today also at that session. It will be great to see everybody before the year breaks up. And I see Harry is back now. So Harry, back to you.
Thank you, Louise, for bailing me out. No, it was just General David who was battling to get into the session. He's our first speaker, so I had to attend to that one. But we're glad we're on the meeting now. Right, let me just quickly continue then what we were busy with. Not far from done there. So, ladies and gents, there we've got our sponsors of the Transport Forum. And let's give them a big hand. We're really proud in them supporting us and making the Transport Forum possible. I just want to remind you quickly about the business directory, which we outsourced to Olga Mashilu, Berlin Bondley consultant. They are administering the business directory for us. Very well categorized business directory. The people are giving us very good feedback in terms of, you know, the hits they're getting from this business directory. So take a picture. There is Olga's number, and contact Olga to get yourself listed in the business directory. It's only 450 rands per year to be listed, so that's not really money, and get listed. Right, the Transport Forum, the presentations you see here today, they've been uploaded to the Transport Forum website, that one, transportseek.com. And I think you all know this website. And to the left of your screen, when you're in that website, you'll see a user login. You need to log in to access the presentations. And it's not only for this session presentations, actually for all the presentations presented over the past more than 15 years. There's more than 900 presentations. When we were at an event this week, again, somebody came to me and complimented the Transport Forum again for that knowledge base, which is so strong and powerful with all those presentations. And you can easily search through all those presentations, and it's all complementary. So you log in. If you haven't got the account yet, then you go to sign up and you create your own complimentary account and your own username and password. Once you've logged in, then you can go to the Transport Forum website, you go to events and you select downloads. Once you've got downloads, then you see this little screen. It's a simple search engine. There's two ways you can search for presentations. There you can, at the top there, you can type in a title or a description. You can type in, for example, widget. And it will search, in the heat search, it will give you all the presentations presented by Louise widget over the past 15 years. Or you can type in logistics and it will search for everything. I had to use you, Louise. So it will search for all the presentations about logistics, for example. If you go to category and you select category, then you can see the days of the events and you can select the day's date, for example, you hit search and it will give you all the presentations presented today. So it's very, very powerful, very, very powerful. All right, now it's a time for fun. Time for fun, ladies and gents. And we're going to ask two questions now, one for each lantern to be won. And the one that answers the question first in the chat room, that person will be the winner of our quiz. And yeah, so there's the pictures of logos of our sponsors. And I'm going to ask you now two questions. Let's see who answers first correctly in the chat room. So the first question is, who is the hosting company of today's session? There's a Beyond the Brain, you're the winner of that one. Congratulations, Beyond. All right, so now the second question. What sponsor of us has the slogan, always visible? C-Track, there you go. Komachu, you're the winner. Congratulations. I'm just making notes here. You guys are sharp this morning. Ladies and gents, right, congratulations to our winners. I would like to take us now to our program and to our host for today, and that is Louise Widget. and she's going to do the formal welcome for us. Thank you very much, Louise.
Thank you very much, Harry, for the opening, and to all the colleagues that's online. Once again, it's a warm welcome. I've actually never had the privilege to introduce a Major General. So Major General David Chilembi, wonderful to have you join us today. It is an incredible privilege, and you weren't online in the beginning, but most of the speakers said they are incredibly excited to have the BMA on the session and to get an update from you in terms of where the BMA stands. One of our colleagues that recently visited the border post observed your presence actually at the border post through your new vehicles and also some of the staff. I think this is the start of a journey where we can hold hands from a public sector point of view and a private sector point of view. We believe the BMA and the structure that's been set up by yourselves and your colleagues has got the opportunity to unlock immense value for trade and trade facilitation. I know that is an area that sounds strange maybe to you, but it is critically important for us from companies that operate in the international supply chain. And then secondly, I also want to welcome our colleague from SARS, Lucky Mulefi, onto the call. Lucky, as always, thank you for being available. And it is going to be incredible to also hear your vision in terms of how the working relationship is going with the BMA, what's the next steps. And I think, if I'm right, this is really the first time on a public forum that we've got these two distinguished organizations and very distinguished speakers to share with us where they stand in terms of their working relationship. And we are extremely privileged to have you here. We know that it is a very difficult time for you at the moment with all the other disruptions going on, and the fact that you've made yourself available and are here is highly appreciated. So on that note, I'm actually going to ask everybody to quickly put their videos on, and for us to give a warm welcome by a round of applause to both speakers today. I think it's such an auspicious occasion, we actually need to do it. So unfortunately, you're going to all have to show your faces and do a little bit of a clap. So thank you very much for everybody that joined in the little bit of fun. It's wonderful to see Lynn online. Hello, Lynn. I spotted some other names here that I normally see online. So very much, there's our very good old friend, Gwen Foster as well. So very big welcome to everybody. We look forward to hearing what you've got to share with us. And Harry, I'm going to hand back if you want to then bring David in to start his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Louise. So David, you're welcome to unmute, and if you can switch on the camera.
Good morning, Harry. I hope you can see me.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I don't know who's going to run the presentation from your side.
David.
Oh, thank you. I can start, Jerry.
Yes, you can start. You're welcome.
Yeah. Please, I will switch off my camera because the system on my side, it's a little bit dodgy. So in order for me not to lose you, I'll rather just speak and switch off the camera. Am I allowed to do that?
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, colleagues, for allowing us to do the presentation today on border management. Firstly, I would like to apologize on what happened last week. I was ready, and we were seriously under pressure from our unions. In fact, because as a new entity, we need to ensure that all our social partners are in sync with what we are doing. So on the day in question, we were urgently summoned to the public PSCBC, which is the Public Sector Bargaining Council, in order for us to be able to brief all the social partners that are in the space, in order for them to be with us in whatever that we're trying to do. So, but then when I realized that the meeting is going to start about 30 minutes late, I tried to join, but only to find that you have already signed off due to other schedules that you are having. But at least here today, I will be able to do the presentation, and I think most of the things will be dealt with in the Q&A, because the presentation, as I'm going to present to you, it's structured in such a way that it talks about the establishment and also the other issues like your business models and all of those issues. So in order for me to really talk to issues that will need maybe some questions, maybe we can deal with it at the Q&A side. Okay, let's move to the next slide, please. As you see, the purpose of us today is to provide an update regarding the operationalization of the Border Management Authority as a Schedule 3A public entity in this forum. Next slide. This slide, Chairperson, it outlines how the presentation is going to look like. Our presentation is going to be divided into 5 parts. I'll be having part A, B, C, D, and E. Part A will talk to the historical perspective on the need for the BMA. And part B, we're going to talk about the reflections on the integration process for the BMA. And part C will be reflections on the capacitation process that the BMA is currently taking on. And part D will talk about the future outlook of the BMA, which will contain the business model, our operational model, the high-level functional areas of the BMA. And the last part, which is part E, will talk about the key strategic activities and staff conditions of service. You will notice that in terms of the outline, as I've mentioned earlier, is that we are presenting this in order to show what the BMA is doing currently in terms of its operationalization, and also on the way forward, that what are we going to do. And then it also talks about the processes that we are following, that will lead to the total establishment of the BMA. Can we then move to the next slide? As I've mentioned earlier, that our part A will talk mostly on the historical perspective, on the need for the BMA, the reflecting on the problem statement, and the recap on the legislative mandate. Next slide. Colleagues, in this slide, we are now giving you the historic perspective. Remember, border functions are conducted in South Africa perspective at 72 identified and declared ports of entries. We have 53 land borders, 10 international airports, and the 9 sea harbors. Obviously, in terms of the sea harbors, you know that 8 of them are on the water side, while the other one is the dry port, which is City Deep, that is in Johannesburg. The whole rationale or the historic perspective starts from the issues pre-1994. Colleagues will realize that pre-1994, the border management issues were the preserve of the South African Police Service and the South African Defence Force. We did not have all these other structures that we are having now at the borders. Hence, if you look at the current footprint, you will see that in all our border lines, including the coastline and the air borderline, the Defence Force is the one that is more in that area. And in the declared ports of entry, you have the SAPS currently with other government departments. However, the SAPS is the one that is having more capacity. It is based on the pre-1994 issues. And we are saying after 1994, the government then started to deploy a multi-agency approach, whereby we then had 7 organs of state conducting border law enforcement in the port of entry and the borderline. And in order to coordinate all this multi-agency department, we've been having a challenge that there haven't been a structure that will be able to coordinate. So each and every government department or agency in the environment were reporting to their specific ministries or cascading authorities. So as early as 1996, just after the finalization of the constitution, we then had what we called the Border Affairs Coordinating Committee that was trying to coordinate all the functions. And then in 1997, we had what we call the National Interdepartmental Structure on Border Control. Also, sorry, I don't know what, can you still hear me?
100%, David, carry on.
Okay, I don't know what's happening on my system this side. It shows that I don't have a time. I don't know what's happening, but let me continue. Yeah. Then in 2001, we had what we call Border Control Operational Coordinating Committee, a BCOCC. Towards 2010, for the World Cup, we have the Interagency Clearing Forum. And currently, as we speak, we have what we call the National Border Management Coordinating Committee that was established in 2013. All these committees, in other words, the membership in those committees were like friendly type of membership. There was no legislation that forces the government departments or agencies to take part. So government department will attend if they want. If they don't want, then they will not attend. So we then had those challenges. Then we had various national intelligence estimates that pointed out on the fragmentation, that this fragmentation of multi-agency approach is really creating a problem, because the way in which we were working is dependent on informal coordination that created the fragmentation, the silo realities, the approaches, and also played into issues of corruption, because other government department could not, in fact, tell the other government department what to do, and there was no one coordination. Then we in order to move away from that, those national intelligence estimates then suggested that there should be an integrated border management approach, and also looking at us having a single command and control. It's that is the way that then led to the establishment of the BMA, and also the issue of having an act that will deal with the issues of border management. Hence, in 2020, the president then signed the BMA Act to be in operational. So the BMA Act, what it says is that the BMA will assume all frontline functions, while department retain policy and the legislative aspects. In other words, the BMA, when it is established, it will do the frontline functions of those government departments. What will happen is that the president will sign a Section 97 proclamation that will move those functions from those government departments into BMA in order for us to be able to work in accordance to those functions that have been transferred. So in this document, when we continue, we'll show you how all those processes has unfolded. Next slide, please. This slide, colleagues, is also talking about why do we need the BMA. As I've mentioned in the previous slides, that there have been silo approaches and fragmentation in terms of processes. So the first point that we are talking about here, it says government departments have bigger mandates. In other words, all the government departments that are assigned with the border control function at borders have other mandates. And then the frontline function of the border control then plays a very smaller role in terms of what those government departments are doing. And they, in terms of forecast and support, it's very minimal in terms of those government departments that are at the ports, because the government departments have other bigger mandates that they have to do inside the country. An example here is that, for example, the Department of Home Affairs. Home Affairs have got the immigration branch that deals with those people that are working on the ground for immigration. However, most of their concentration is more inland, where they are looking at the problems that are taking place inland with regards to illegal migration, and they don't really focus on the place where the problem is starting, which is the port of entry. SAPS, for example, have got a component called border policing. That component only works at the port of entry, doing access control. However, most of the functions that SAPS are involved in are also inland, so they give the focus is not more on the port of entry, but inside the country. So that issue has also left the country to be vulnerable in terms of the international regulations that we are supposed to do at borders. For example, if you look at in the maritime environment, all the issues that come from the International Maritime Organization, in the aviation, issues that come from the International Civil Aviation Organization, we are unable to really concentrate on those issues because our work is more inland other than looking at what we need to do at the borders. Then on paragraph B, we're saying frontline border functions are spread across various departments. Therefore, there's a lot of duplication and fragmented operational procedures. You know, you are in the environment. You can see the duplication that is taking place there, where, for example, you'll find that you have cleared your goods through customs, but then police will then stop the same containers that have been cleared because of those fragmentation, and because of the issue that you'll find that police are looking at this and customs are looking at that, and immigration are looking at other things. Then we've got all those many stops that are happening in the border environment, and this is affecting the economy into the country. Because if you look, for example, the issues that are happening at land borders, the number of trucks that you find on the route towards the border are having those challenges because of the fragmentation that we have inside in the country and also with our neighboring countries. In terms of infrastructure, as you know that on all border management issues, the infrastructure, office and residential lies with the Department of Public Works. Now, Public Works have got a lot of work that they have to do inland, and the issues of borders for them is not on their main issues. So that is one of the challenges that we've been facing. And you'll notice that in the BMA Act, the infrastructure of office and residential accommodation will be transferred into the BMA in order for the BMA to be able to deal with those issues. However, in the sea and air environment, the landlord continues to be the responsible persons with regards to those issues, because in those environments we've got the Transnet, TNPA, and we've got the AXA that are the landlords of those environments, and Public Works only deal with them in terms of leases with them. Then on paragraph D, we're saying border frontline is characterized by fragmented and unintegrated systems, thus making operational cumbersome and labor intensive. As I've just mentioned now, that the systems also are not talking to each other. You'll find that in order for us to balance between trade and security, we're unable to do that because our systems are not talking to each other. So the BMA is trying to look at that systems have to be integrated or to be interfaced to each other in order for us to be able to do the work that needs to be done in the border environment. Next slide, please. In this slide, we're just showing you the mandate of the BMA as set out in Section 5 of the BMA Act. You'll see that the mandate talks to three issues. It talks to the facilitation and management of the legitimate movement of people and goods, of people, and the next one talks about goods, and the third one talks about that we have to cooperate and coordinate the border law enforcement functions with SAPS, SARS, and SNTF, and border communities or any other persons. The reason why we have the one on C, it deals mainly on issues that we are encountering in the border. For example, in the land borderline, in the land border environment, you'll see that there are many communities that have been affected by the borders. And these communities, most of them are claiming that they have been part of the other side or part of the other side. So we need to look at that how do we deal with those issues where you find that the border divides one community? How are we going to manage all those issues? In terms of the sea environment, you'll know on the coastline that we have a lot of fishing harbors that are there, that have got the capacity that people can launch into the international space. Those are the things that the border management will be looking at. In terms of the facilitation of the movement of goods, you'll see that this function is mainly the function of customs. But in terms of the implementation protocol, we and customs, we have entered into a protocol that how are we going to deal with these issues? And also, you remember that in some of the ports, customs are not present. So the BMA will be able to deal with those issues in those ports, however, driven by the implementation protocol that we have signed with SARS customs. Then there's a section on the BMA Act, Section 4 in brackets 2, that emphasizes that the border law enforcement function should be exclusively performed by the officers of the BMA. That has caused so many challenges with other government departments, because it looks like it says it's only BMA that are going to be functional at the port of entry, which is not the main thing, because like as I've mentioned, that there will be implementation protocols with any other government department. Although the Act talks about three government departments, it talks about SAPS, customs, and the defense, that we need to enter into that implementation protocol. But it doesn't stop us from entering any protocol with any other organ, either of state or any private organ that is working in that environment, in order to make sure that the border functions are seamless. Then the last one says BMA will be overseen by a technical committee, a PTC, and the interministerial consultative committee of ministers. In other words, the BMA is not going to have a board, but it's going to function under public administration, overseen by those two structures. The PTC is a committee of directors general of government departments or of that have got to do with border control. And then it will be reporting to the interministerial consultative committee, which has got 10 ministers that are sitting in that committee. So the process that we have agreed on is that those two structures will be meeting at least 4 times in a year. So the PTC will meet, the process flow will be that the BMA will report to the PTC on issues that relate to border control. The PTC will then report to the interministerial, and the interministerial will be reporting to
David, can you hear us?
I think he's just on mute, Harry. So, David, if you can possibly just unmute yourself, or Harry, if you can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, those are the challenges that I've been talking about, that where I'm sitting, I've got these network challenges. Can we move then to the next slide, ma'am? Okay, now we are on part B. Part B, like as I've mentioned earlier, it will be dealing with the reflections on the BMA integration model and the integration process. Next slide, please. Yeah, as I've mentioned earlier, that there are certain dynamics and the complexities that will be on this integration. Remember, we said we're going to integrate functions in terms of Section 97 that will be moved from one government department into the BMA. So those functions, like as I've mentioned earlier, was that is the Department of Health. Those who are dealing with port health functions, they'll be moved into the BMA in terms of Section 97. The functions of immigration from the Department of Home Affairs, those functions will be transferred into the BMA. Then that is specifically the immigration functions will be transferred into the BMA. Then in terms of the Department of Forestry and Fisheries, the biosecurity part that deals with the fauna and flora is the one that will be, in terms of Section 97, be transferred into the BMA. Then the last one will be the agricultural part that will also be transferred into the BMA. You'll see that in terms of the South African Police Service, we have put in a blue on them. Is that SAPS has got 2 functions that are being performed in the border environment. They've got a classical policing function, and they've got a border control function. The function that will be moved into the BMA is the border control or the access function that the SAPS contingents of borders are doing currently. That is the function that will be moved into the BMA. However, the classical part of that, it won't be moved into the BMA because that is solely a function that will be done by the SAPS. A good example here is at Durban Harbour and OR Tambo. Because if you look at Durban Harbour, they've got a police station in the port of entry. So that police station functions won't be moved into the BMA because it remains a classical policing function. But the other functions that relate to your access control into the perimeter of the port and all of those will then be moved into the BMA. However, we are seriously looking at this between the SAPS and the BMA. Hence, we did not go in terms of the Section 97 with the SAPS because of that dual function that the SAPS is currently functioning. Remember also that whenever there's a problem inside a harbor, because a harbor it's a central business district on its own. Maybe there are riots or there are any other criminal activities. The SAPS will then be allowed to come in order to conduct those functions. Hence, we are delineating clear the border control function and the classical policing function. So in Durban Harbour or at OR Tambo, you'll always have some police officials that will be working in that environment in order for them to do their classical policing function. However, the access one will then be moved into the BMA because the BMA is going to be a law enforcement entity on its own. I just forgot earlier, maybe I should have mentioned this, that currently the BMA has not been established. We are working on the modalities of establishing it. It's only on the 1st of April next year, 2023, that the BMA will then function as an entity on its own. Currently, we're functioning as a branch under the Department of Home Affairs in order for us to be able to advertise those critical posts and also the presentation to Treasury in order for us to get our REMCO, get our risk engines and all those issues in order for that when we start on the 1st of April next year, then we'll be on our own. In other words, BMA is not going to be Home Affairs. BMA is going to be on its own, but currently, due to government processes, in order for government to give us money to be able to establish, to be able to do what the chair has been mentioning that earlier, that you saw some cohorts of border guards that we have employed. All those, we are doing it currently under the auspices of the Department of Home Affairs. Then you'll see, colleagues, that in terms of the South African National Defence Force, we have signed an implementation protocol. So the defense is going to continue doing their function at the borderline. We are going to be functioning on the vulnerable segments of the borderline. Because, like as I've mentioned earlier, that we know about the informal crossings that are in our borderline. So the BMA would concentrate on those. It will be the 10-kilometer radius from each port of entry and those informal crossings where we have to deploy statically the border guards to stop the movement of people who are crossing up and down, and where we are of the opinion that maybe a community crossing point can be opened. Those discussions will then be dealt with, and we'll then be looking at how are we going to deal with those issues. Because currently we've got one community crossing point between ourselves and Botswana, where there's one community called Tsidila Mlomo. The community have got a chief, and the chief have got subjects on both sides, in Botswana and also on the South African side. And their complaint was that if they wanted to visit each other there, they have to travel many kilometers in just to go just on the other side of the fence. So we have come up with a community crossing point in that area where we have involved the communities, involved the tribal authority that have identified that who are those subjects on the other side, on both sides, and we then issue them with a certain permit that will be able to, that they can move up and down. This is something that we have looked at even in the US-Mexican border, that the US are also dealing with things like that, where you find that there's one community, but separated by the fence, and we look at how do you manage those issues. Hence, we have come up with the issue of the implementation protocol. With the South African Revenue Service, as I've mentioned earlier, is that the functions, we have the goods functions, and customs have got the goods functions. So we have signed that implementation protocol. That how are we going to work together? How are we going to assist the members on the ground, the joint training, the joint ICT systems that we should have with them in order to be able to function together. And also to look at issues of the National Targeting Center. Because, for example, as I've mentioned, that we have to look at balancing trade and security. We don't have to stop people that are not supposed to be stopped. People that are known shippers and known people who are bringing things into the country in order to support the economic development. Those are the reasons why we have signed the implementation protocol. Next slide, please. This slide, colleagues, it just explains the integration model, that what is it that we are doing in terms of integrating the other functions, because it's a very complex issue that we are busy with. So there's a model that is called the National Macro Organization of Government. That government has decided that whenever you are integrating government departments, we have to go through this model. So we are highly busy on the NMOC, and also, as I've mentioned earlier, that we've been negotiating with labor in terms of the transfer agreements with the employees of those different government departments. This is the process that we have followed. You'll see that the committees, we've got a legal committee that deals with the proclamations that have been signed, Section 97, and also the implementation protocols, including the service level agreements, because the BMA is going to do the frontline function. So if we take over, for example, the port health function, we need to know that in terms of health pratique, what do we do? And those service level agreements or the procedure manuals will then be sent to the BMA in order for us not to start from scratch, but to continue with the current process that is happening on the ground. However, those people from the port health or agriculture will then be reporting under the BMA. In terms of human resource, we have looked at the affected staff integration. As we speak, from next week, we'll be going around to the 4 regions, because we're not going to work in terms of provinces, but we have divided the country into regions, into 4 regions, in order for us to start the consultations with the staff and going with the unions that what is it that's going to affect them, all the integrated change, the change management that should come in there, and all those issues. In terms of finance, there's a finance committee led by the CFO of the Department of Home Affairs, who's working under our auspices, and meeting with the other CFOs of the other government department. Remember, the BMA Treasury won't give BMA money, but the budget will be taken from those government departments that are going to be transferred from their mother government departments into the BMA. So that finance committee deals with those finances that the budgets that were used by those government departments that must come into to the BMA. In terms of infrastructure, as I've mentioned, that the BMA Act talks about that in the land environment, the BMA would be responsible for the office and the residential accommodation. We are talking to DPWI in terms of those budgets that must be transferred and the capacity that will be able to do the repair and maintenance programs that are there, their budgets in order for us to continue with that. However, we decided that we're going to start with the 31. This is more about the land borders. The 31 land borders that are going to be handed over to BMA next year, and the others will still be under DPWI in order for us to be able to know exactly, or to create a capacity that will be able to do the project management or the programs with regards to repair and maintenance programs. On the systems, I spoke to you earlier that we have to look at which systems need to be integrated, which systems need to have an interface to each other in order for us to be able to function. And in that system issue, the BMA is going to have its own national targeting center that will be linked to like the targeting center of customs. And we need to agree there that how are we going to be interfaced into customs in order for us not to encroach on certain things that in terms of legislation, customs cannot share with us. But when we are interfaced with them, they will be able to give us the information that we need to see. And in terms of your Transnet, we'll have they'll have to give us the information that goes with the information that goes to them in terms of the vessels that are en route or the aircrafts that are en route to South Africa in order for us to be able to balance the trade and security. On communication, also, we are dealing with the issues of branding, the integrated comms, that how are we going to deal with that? As we have seen that the BMA now, we've got a logo, the cars that we are buying or the vessels will be branded in accordance to the BMA. So those are the issues that we're dealing with in terms of the two structures, the national macro organization of government and also the negotiated process with labor. Next slide. Colleagues, this slide is now part C. We're going to do the reflections on the capacitation of the BMA and the deployment of the border guards. Next slide. The reason why, colleagues, we are dealing with the issues of capacitation. Remember earlier, we said we are dealing with this issue in a two-pronged strategy. We've got the integration, which is the movement of resources from those affected government departments into the BMA. Then the other one, we spoke about the issue of capacitation, that while we are busy with this process, we have identified a risk that maybe the integration may not go in accordance to our satisfaction or our way of doing things. For example, the issue of as I've mentioned, the issue of the PSCBC or our social partners who were pushing back, some of them saying, what is it for their employees for them to be transferred into the BMA? how are we going to deal with the issues of your medical aid, the pension, and all those issues. So we then also brought in the capacitation process that should we have challenges that we are unable to get maybe budget based on those discussions, we will go back to Treasury and say, Treasury, this is what we need to do. Can you then give us budget in order to, while busy with the integration process, we can also show the capacities that we can bring in while this process is unfolding. Hence, you have the capacity that you have seen that we have deployed in the land borders of the border guards that you have seen there. That is why we following that route. And also, this route of capacitation, we're talking about a recruitment process that we can't wait until the BMA is established. However, we need to recruit certain portfolios. For example, we are recruiting for the head of border control. In terms of the structure of the BMA, we supposed to have somebody who will be the head. As we speak now, with this strike that is currently happening, we are responsible to coordinate those functions. So if you don't have somebody that will be dealing with that, you find that we will then have those challenges. So we have already advertised posts for people who will be manning that border control function while we're busy with the finalization of the structure. We also have advertised a head for the National Targeting Center, because while we are establishing, we are running with this process. So that's the reason why we have gone through the recruitment process for those, and also for a post of the corporate service, because we need people that will run the budget that we are getting and all those issues. We're also busy with the recruitment of other support staff, which is underway to include experts in various portfolios such as the risk, finance, and legal. Because in terms of as a Schedule 3A, before we're being listed, we needed to have those portfolios already established. So we are hard at work on that. Obviously, already some advice has been done in order for us to be able to deal with that. Then on the 14th of July, 2022, as I've mentioned earlier, that we onboarded and deployed 200 first cohort of the border guards that we have deployed on the vulnerable segments of the borderline, but more specifically in the land border. I'll show you in the next slide where we have deployed them. And over and above the 200, we have also currently busy with the recruitment of about 40 that will also complement the 200 in order to cover those spaces that I'll show you in the next slide. In terms of the regions, we are busy also in terms of the recruitment. However, what we have done, there we're talking about 5 regions. It's not 5, it's 4. The 5th one will be at national level, where we'll be having like your region, whenever we've got a situation, let's say a problem at a specific port, we'll have that capacity that will be sitting at head office that will be dealing with those emergency issues. But we have not, we decided that the 4 regions commanders and the 72 port commanders, we're not going to advertise them now. We were going to await the integration process in order to allow a fair process, that those that will be integrating must be able to have a fair process of applying. And we can have a bigger slide of us being able to choose, because the risk that we saw now is that if we advertise this, then many people that will be applying are those that are within the Department of Home Affairs, and it will not be a fair process. Next slide.
Thank you, David. Please conclude by 10:30. Just a kind of reminder.
At 10:30. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll be able to do so. Yeah. Okay. The next slide is just talking about the vulnerable segments that I've mentioned on the border guards. We have deployed them in the Bait Bridge or Zimbabwean side, on the Mozambican side in the Kruger National Park, at Libombo border, Oshuk border area, and also on the North KwaZulu-Natal, Kosi Bay side, as we know that those things that are happening in terms of the stolen vehicles that are going through there, and also two that are around Lesotho. Next slide, please. This slide just depicts the future outlook of the BMA in terms of our business model, our operational model, and the high-level functional areas. Next slide. Next slide, please. Let's go to the next slide. This is the our business model, where we're saying our value proposition will be to come up with a world-class coordinated and integrated border management platform with a single command and control. It will obviously, we'll be talking about our stakeholders and our support functions. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, in this slide, I'm not going to bore you more of it. This is just an operational model that talks about the core functions that we'll be doing. What are the external role players that will be working with, the issues of the integrated SLAs that we have to sign, the implementation protocols, and all these other legislative and regulatory frameworks that we have to follow. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is just the functional area. Also, that talks about how are we going to function within the BMA and with all the corporate services that needs to be part of that. I think colleagues will have that, and you'll be able to go through it. Because we're talking about the declared port of entry that will be functioning, the declared port of entry, and in the vulnerable segments of the borderline, either in the sea, air, and land. In the aviation, we're talking about the smaller airports and the landing strips. In the sea environment, we're talking about the small fishing harbors and the slipways where the vessels can be launched into the international space. Next slide. I'm trying to cover up my time now. Yeah, next slide, okay. Yeah, this slide only talks about the transnational structure of the BMA, as I've mentioned earlier, that the BMA currently is a special branch incubated under the Department of Home Affairs. BMA will only be operational next year, 1st April. And discussions on BMA permanent organizational structure is underway based on the business model, operational model, and the high-level functional areas. The recruitment, as I've mentioned earlier, that of governance committees that will be effected in the last quarter, the risk committee, the audit committee, and the HR and the remuneration committee. And also the fact that the functions in terms of the Section 97 has already been delegated to us through the Section 97. Next slide, which is the okay. I've already spoken about this slide, that the NMOC process, the PSCBC resolutions that we going through, because here we're talking about members that doesn't have to resign, but will be transferred into the BMA. However, there will be a vetting process that we need to do. So there won't be any just transfer from government to us. There will be a process of vetting, because we don't want to carry the bargain of those members that are crooked. Members' pension will remain under the GEPF, and the BMA will continue to for the contributions, and there'll be no interruptions. All members will wear one uniform. We are going to have a uniform, a new uniform in the environment. As we have seen, the green one that will be in the field, in the borderline, and we're working also on the uniform that will be worn by the specialists and the enforcement and our support. Based on Section 13, members will have to undergo vetting process, and no one will. We're saying no one will lose their job, but if somebody gets a negative vetting, will then be sent back to the mother department. Next slide, which is the last slide. Here we are saying, based on the four presentation slides, we urge you as the partners, because we regard you as part of the partners, that we are going to go the route with you to support us towards the operationalization of the BMA as the Schedule 3A, and also assist the BMA internal and external communication during engagement, because we think that it's very much important that we talk about this process, because some other people will then talk about other things that the BMA, maybe it's another defense or law enforcement or whatever. But as I've mentioned, there's nothing like that. And we're saying also number 3, to note the implementation protocol entered into the with SAPS, SARS, and defense, and also to champion the fact that BMA seeks to secure border for development through the facilitation of people, trade, movement, counter illicit goods, and human trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daryl, for this.
Harry, you also on mute.
Yes. I was trying to use the space bar. It's not always working so good. Yeah, David, thank you very much for a comprehensive presentation. We really appreciate your time, and clearly you've done lots of work to prepare for us. We really appreciate sharing all this information with us. And I'm quite sure that people are looking forward to engage with me in the questions and answer session. Thank you so much. Ladies and gents, I just want to see whether Lucky, our next presenter, will be able to share. Now he's also got problems getting on. So just bear with us. Let us just get Lucky on the call. He's got problems with load shedding. So just bear with us for a moment. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Harry. While you assist Lucky, I've in the background been just we're going to desperately try and get him on. He is struggling with load shedding. But David, thank you very, very much. I must say this has been incredible for you to share such a lot of information with us, and for the transparency and openness. I see there is some questions that we've got in the chat, and if you are happy, we're going to start with some questions and answers in the meantime, because this is a wonderful opportunity. And unfortunately, now that we've connected with you, I'm going to somewhat put the peg in the ground now and say next year, we definitely want to have you on this particular transport forum on a more regular basis to share an update with us. And I think we need to reconsider this date of the 1st of April for your start date. Maybe we must rather make it the 2nd of April, just with 1st of April being connected to April's Fool's Day. My first question, and it leads on to what Michael Henning has also put in the chat, and I think if anything, that is probably the biggest fear that we from a trade perspective have got at the moment, is that the focus of the BMA, and we think it is fantastic, it's around security, ensuring that our borders are not so porous, safety, illicit trade flows, human people smuggling. We also refer to fauna, which is really on the uptick at the moment. But really, getting this balance between enforcement and safety and security and trade facilitation is going to be a very delicate balance. So maybe you can share some insights in how you're going to use your mechanisms that you've set up. I see we've got a whole new host of acronyms now. The Border Technical Committee, do you really see that's the area where the trade facilitation aspect that really sits under SARS can be facilitated with the BMA's mandate? Maybe some insights around that will be much, much appreciated. Thank you very much, David.
Do you want me to answer one by one, or?
If it's easier, no, I think it will probably be easier if we deal with him one by one, if that's in order with you. Perfect.
All right. As I've mentioned earlier, that the BMA's main function will be to balance between the two, security and trade. And also the implementation protocol that we have signed with SARS. In other words, we will be working hand in hand with SARS, and SARS will take the lead in terms of trade. We will also be looking at the issue of security. We surely going to balance between the two. The BMA is not about more on security. Hence, we are taking over the other functions of the other government departments, your agriculture, your health, that deals with also the movement in the port of entry. So the structure of the BMA, we're going to have people that will be dealing with law enforcement, and we'll be having people that specializes with special functions like your movement of goods or something like that, and we'll also have auxiliary type of functions. So we're not only going to concentrate on the law enforcement, but those issues will be dealt with into those aspects of functions that we need to do. The BTC, the Commissioner of SARS, is sitting at the BTC. So all issues that relates to trade, issues that are of concern, maybe coming from the World Trade Customs Organization, will be dealt with, because the Commissioner of SARS will be sitting in that structure. The Minister of Finance or of Trade and Industry will also be sitting at the IMCC. So it's not a security structure, but it's a balanced structure that we'll be dealing with. Thank you.
No, thank you, David. I think that gives us some assurances, because I think that is going to be, if we can get that recipe right, it's going to work like magic, and it will really add some benefits. I'm going to give the floor to Dan Gracia. Dan is a colleague that we work with. He's actually based in America, but if I understand correctly, he's still in Johannesburg. So Dan, the floor is yours to ask your two questions. And Michael, I hope my question is actually encompasses your question, and then we can move on. So Michael, if you can just give me a thumbs up if you're happy. Dan, over to you.
Yeah, General, I have two questions that come to mind. Are there envisioned bilateral agreements between your organization and this future organization and other countries to be able to share intelligence? For example, let's say NII images, so that there's a higher return on investment if in the budget of one country, let's say they are afforded an NII budget, and then maybe the next year, the other country is afforded an NII budget, that both countries can really capitalize on that NII technology and the two budgets. That's number one of bilateral agreements in terms of sharing intelligence. And the second question is there envisioned in the organization an essential workforce that potentially, for lack of a better word, can't strike? They're deemed essential. They're 24-hour. They're going to be there on the frontier to ensure trade continues to flow. And these questions may be premature, but I'll take the opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rian. Chair, maybe to mention before I answer the questions that yesterday we had a meeting with Rian. He was in our office. When we heard that he's around, we requested him to come and help us in spearheading on what are the best practices that they are having in the US and the Mexican side. So it proves the point that I've just mentioned, that we are not just going to be a silo type of an organization. We're going to look at all these issues, as we have seen in our value proposition and in our vision, that this is what we wanted to achieve. However, in terms of the questions that you have asked me, in terms of the sharing of intelligence, we have seen in the structure that we, on the NMOC structure, that we're talking about ICT systems. We're talking about the National Targeting Center. We're talking about the issues of the advanced passenger information and advanced passenger processing. All those issues will be dealt with in terms of sharing of intelligence. So the post that I've just said, we need to immediately advertise of the National Intelligence, the NTC. It's going to do that function. They will be charged to do that function of intelligence sharing. The interface that I've just mentioned, the integration. So all of those issues will be dealt with in that regard. The previous 3 weeks, our team was in the US in order to look at the best practices, that how is the US doing their function. So it shows that this is what we are going to do. In terms of the IMO, International Maritime Organization, we're going to form part of those processes. The International Civil Aviation Organization, we're going to form part of that. In fact, we are planning that we need to attend the assembly that will be dealt with in Canada. Next week, one of the members that you met yesterday, Mr. Van Niel, will be going to US with the transport team that will be looking at the issues of the Coast Guard. In the second question, in terms of the essential service, the BMA Act stipulated clearly that all members of the BMA will form part of the essential service. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you very much, General. That gives us more clarity on that. And I think what is coming through very clearly is that you're also looking at international best practices and international experiences, which I think is very good, because we don't really want to reinvent the wheel. We just want to get some good practices. I see there's a comment from Department of Maritime Industry. I don't know, Tsepiso, if you want to make have a bit of a chat around this, but I also find it very encouraging that we are going to get better enforcement, obviously, with the marine problems that we've got and the huge amount of poaching and everything. it will be wonderful to have more strengthened visibility and control over our smaller ports that are not necessarily non-commercial, that are not commercial ports. So it's a piece. I see you've put your, you are available if you want to make some comments, and then maybe David can answer to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the General. From the Department of Transport, I think we can appreciate the work that has been done from the side of the BMA. And then as we do that one, we can appreciate the work or collaboration that is supposed to happen. And I was just also noting and saying that that front line, it should work for the betterment of the society, more especially in terms of economic growth. So thank you, General, for sharing. And then I do believe that Mr. Faniels, as you have indicated, he will be also joining the team from the Department of Transport to the Coast Guard. So it is slowly becoming a reality in terms of the Coast Guard. Thank you.
Maybe General, some comments from your side about the focus on particularly the smaller borders and getting the proper Coast Guard operation going. That seems to be a very important initiative, and it will be good to get some insights from you. Thank you. Harry, I think we might have lost the General as well at this particular point if I look at the attendee list.
It's a serious challenge here.
Today is not a good day. I think, Basil, I note your hand. Welcome also. Maybe, Charles, if I can step in for the General in terms of the two questions that you've got, and Basil, then over to you. Unfortunately, Lucky seems to be unable to connect. So what we're going to do is let Lucky's session stand over. We're also cognizant of the fact that we've only booked your time until 11 o'clock. And hopefully we'll be able to get the General back. But Charles, I think the first thing is, it seems that the intent of the BMA is not to create an additional or further layer, but really consolidate the existing disparate layers between agriculture, immigration, and all those into one central structure. So hopefully, if they get that correct, we're not going to have an additional layer, but more a streamlined layer and a consolidated layer. And we really, during the COVID period, have experienced the problems that they were, where the rules of the departments were different. They implemented at different times, they worked different hours. And I think having one coordinated and one central function will be beneficial for us. In terms of the financial benefits that are expected to flow, I can't really comment, but I'm hoping that there will be less problems and more coordinated problems, which is a very positive step. In terms of the BMA, the skills transfer, I think that's a question that we can ask the General maybe to respond, and we will share that when we share the presentations as well. Because, yeah, I fully agree with you. Transferring these skills over is going to be a challenge, but it seems from the explanation that he gave us that they might transfer people over, which means then very positively the skills and the people will go together. So hopefully that will be an opportunity to be able to bridge that gap. I hope that at least answers your questions. And then Basil, over to you. Let's see if we can assist with your question, and it would be very nice to hear you, get your inputs as well. Thank you, Basil. Over to you.
Thanks, Louise. Well, I suppose just following through from what Charles intimated there in terms of additional layers, we currently do have an agency charged with somewhat of a regulatory oversight as well as some legislative oversight, the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency. The current challenges is that there's such a lack of alignment between their role and other government entities. And we're now bringing the BMA, and I noted in one of the slides, the Deputy Commissioner indicated that there would be an agreement or a memorandum of sorts between the agency and the BMA. I just fear two things, and you know, if and when we get to engage with the Commissioner and the team, we might get further insight that we are now further complicating this lack of alignment, because there's going to be some uncertainty as to who's going to eventually be responsible for some of the legislative processes in the cross-border space. But more broadly speaking, and I think, Louise, if we can get kind of a commitment, is that are we allowed to make submissions where to, or questions for clarity, and will the DC then respond to us directly, or do we send them via you, or you will collate? I'm putting you on the spot somewhat. And finally, 1st of April is around the corner. You know, what structures and what alternatives has the Deputy Commissioner got in place if they miss that target? Because we're all going to be aligning ourselves, or as you indicated, maybe 2nd of April as a better option. So yeah, you know, it's just a serious concern. We currently sit in a very pass the ball environment in this space. Nobody takes real accountability now with vis-a-vis the Agency for Cross-Border and the BMA. I think we're going to be facing further challenges. Just my perception at this point, but I have full faith in the Deputy Commissioner and his soon-to-be structured team to eliminate any misalignment and create certainty for us. Thank you, Louise.
No, thank you, Basil, and David managed to join us again. So, David, thank you very much. I think the concern that was raised by Basil was we've got all these working committee or government departments. So the first thing is the coordination between these government departments is already fragmented, and through your memorandums of understandings, you're obviously going to create this network that you can start working together. But is it possible, you know, how are we going to ensure that the right hand, in essence, knows what the left hand is doing? You know, because that is going to really be where the penny is going to drop. So that's the first question. And I think then, very importantly, there's obviously out of your presentation is going to be a whole host of questions that people have got further engagement. And just if you can give us maybe a channel of where this can be directed to. And then I'm going to be very naughty and ask for me something that is critically important is the BTC currently is only public sector engagement. And I think there is definitely a need with this new period that we're going in for the private sector participation in even a forum like the BTC. So would that be something that could be considered? And if it could be considered, how should we as private sector organize ourselves to be able to have a collective voice and have some insights and share some learnings and experiences through a possible structure? So those are really the two questions, David, and thank you for getting back onto the call. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much. I've been affected by serious load shedding where I am. However, I'm able to connect, I'm connecting now with my phone. The question that I've, or the comments that I had from Basil and from you, Chair, let me start by the BTC. Remember, the BTC is just an overseeing structure. It's not the structure that will be doing the work. It's just an overseeing structure of government. The BTC is the government departments or the director generals of the government departments that have got to do with border issues. Then if there are issues, will then be elevated to the IMCC, which is also still a government process in terms of the ministers. And if there's any other issue that need to be taken to the presidency. However, any cooperation or any involvement of private will be talking to us directly as the BMA, because it's just that when I was presenting the business model of the BMA, I was rushed for time. That's why I quickly went through that process. But the presentation I think you have, you will see that the other government, the other stakeholders are going to play a part. That how are we going to connect with you? But it will be direct to us, not to the PTC. The PTC is just an overseeing in terms of governance process only. But with private, we're going to talk to you like as I'm talking to you now. Because if we were only dealing with government, I'll not have been allowed to come into this platform. The other issue that Basil have mentioned was that 1st of April, it's not a April Fool Day, but that is the beginning of government processes in terms of budgeting and the listing of entities. So we cannot be listed now because it must go through the government processes. If you have followed the minister's MTBB SP speech, the Minister of Finance, he has mentioned the establishment of the BMA by 1st of April. In fact, if you go and look at the narrative report, it's fine. Go and look at page 42, where the minister simply make it clear that 1st of April, the BMA will be listed as a private entity, as a government entity that will be looking at the issues of borders. The other functions, as I've mentioned in terms of Section 97, the president has already signed it. So those functions have now been moved into the BMA. So we're just waiting for the 1st of April for listing. Hence, we're not saying on the 1st of April, it's only when we're going to start looking at how we're going to deal with issues. We already dealing with those issues. As I've mentioned, that we have also advertised posts for all those committees that needs to be in there. And in terms of the other government departments or any agency, we are moving towards the signing of SLAs. That how are we going to work together with you? So you are covered. You'll be with us. But maybe for further engagement, Chair, through the convener, I will give you our details where other engagements can be sent through in order for us to be able to deal with those issues. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, General. We really appreciate that. And I think what we will do going forward is to maybe look at setting up some kind of forum from an industry perspective where we can then deal directly, apologies, where we can deal directly with the BMA on an ongoing basis, because I think when we start operationalizing this new structure, we might find that there will be need for private sector and yourselves to be working very, very closely together. Precious, I see you've got your hand up. Happy to hand over to you and for you to ask your question.
Morning, Chair. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to express what I have. First of all, thanks for this committee. I was not aware of this committee. My name is Precious Mabasa from National Department of Transport and the Roads Branch. I saw the presentation with Mr. David. I'm so interested, but I'm a little bit worried because they never said anything about a cross-border road agency that is under roads and also SANRAL. According to me, I feel like they were supposed to include those agencies under the border management and also National Department of Transport. The reason being that I once did the assessment along the border posts, whereby I visited some border posts with cross-border. So the findings that we did, it's regarding the encroachment on the road reserve. So I don't know if maybe since they said that some of the infrastructure issue it's being dealt by public works, are they not maybe able to also include the road, especially if we can say 1 kilometer approaching all the border posts, because there are many challenges on the roads leading to the border posts. The second one that I want to raise, it's regarding the Groblersdal Bridge. When we visited in April with cross-border, there were some findings that we are going to send to the board manager or to BMU. So one of the findings that we are seeing under the border post is that we don't have dedicated lanes, especially for dangerous goods. So it becomes a hazard on its own, because if maybe there can be a truck or something can burn, so it's no longer safe on our border post. Another challenge is a parking base. So on those parking bays, I heard that under Groblersdal Bridge, they're going to do the upgrade for the new border post. Is it not possible that they involve cross-border and us National Department of Transport on a design stage, whereby we're going to highlight to them and say, these are the factors that we need you to look at when designing the new border post, because they can upgrade a border post but forget to do, example, the parking lot for heavy vehicles, and still there can be congestion at the border post. Another challenge that we're having, I feel like BMA can also look at, as I heard them talking about the 10-kilometer radius, they can look maybe for that 10-kilometer radius, even on the road network, to say that these are the challenges that we are facing when it comes to the roads approaching our border post, more especially in South Africa. The main challenge is people are taking advantage of our country. The reason being that you find that, for example, you find that at the front of the border post, people are only staying in South Africa, but when you cross, for example, you go to Zimbabwe, there are no people who are at the border post. The same people of Zimbabwe are crossing to South Africa to sell and to do all these things that they're doing at the border post. So how is BMU going to look at that? So may they please maybe also involve SANRAL, National Department of Transport, and cross-border in their meeting, so that we can highlight more of the things that we are finding. And also there's a technical committee, which is RIMS, whereby I've been appointed to do the presentation regarding the border post. So I'm saying, since I'll be doing those findings, may I please work with them, because I will be focusing on the infrastructure, because I'm more on the engineering part, the infrastructure, the roads and everything, so that we can try to help them, assist them, to say that since there's going to be a new border post, please look at this, the congestion, so that we no longer have congestion along the border post. Thanks so much, Chair.
No, thank you very much, Precious. I think this is a fantastic example of how having this transport forum, how we can connect not only private sector, but also government agencies with each other. So, David, I'm not going to ask you now to respond to Precious, because she's got a whole long list of things. But I definitely think it is important that the two of you get in touch and coordinate and start working together. Just in the interest of time, I'm just going to quickly welcome Lucky. Shame he really struggled to get onto the call. So I'm going to ask Lucky if it is in order, Lucky, if we can maybe schedule your session for an alternative date, because I think you've also got some important things to share with us. And that we rather conclude on time, because I think a lot of the people have got alternative meetings. So Lucky, if that is in order, and if you are still online, it will be fantastic if we can do it like that. And I just want to take the opportunity. I see Lucky has dropped again. I just want to take the opportunity also to thank the General. And General, I see your hand is up, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I thought that maybe let me quickly deal with the issue that Ms. Mabasa has just raised. Is that let me say we have already spoken to CBRTA. The CEO, Mr. Loazem Boy, we have been talking to him. There's an MOU between the BMA and the CBRTA. So all of those issues that she has mentioned are part of the issues that we needed to discuss with CBRTA. How we got involved with CBRTA from the start is that you remember the challenge of buses and trucks that were coming from Zimbabwe, and the interaction between the Minister of Home Affairs and all. So we started there, and there's an MOU between us and CBRTA. The head of the border section of the CBRTA, in fact, we're supposed to have had a meeting the previous day with Mr. Diodio and Mr. Noah and Mr. Mboy. So let her maybe let me say we are going to deal with those issues that she has raised. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, David. I think it is important because obviously the CBRTA, for us from a road transport point of view, plays an incredibly important role. And we do definitely think that coordination with the BMA is critically important. So because we only booked everybody's time until 11 o'clock, I just want to take the opportunity to thank everybody. We will advise you on the revised date for the strategy session and the presentation that Lucky can do for us. And I want to take the opportunity to thank David very much. David, I think next year we're going to book you probably for a session once a month that we can talk to each other on a regular basis. Thank you for making the time available, and we really appreciate the transparency and openness. I hope you're successful in appointing this very important position. That person is going to have to be a super person to get all the government departments to work together. And to have a ministerial team of 10 ministers in one room is also not a mean feat. So good luck with your journey. We are there to support you, and we look forward to this new dispensation within our region. So Harry, to hand back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise, and thank you for your support and your excellent moderation under difficult circumstances this morning. I must say, poor Lucky, before the event started, he was online, everything was working perfectly, even shared his screen, testing everything, and then obviously 9 o'clock, load shedding kicked in and they went to Lucky. So I feel sorry for Lucky, he really did his best. But Louise, thank you very much for moderating this event and hosting us, we really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to the follow-up sessions. So goodbye, everybody, thank you very much.
Thank you, Harry, and everybody have a great Friday and also a wonderful weekend.